book lovers! I'm Ashley and welcome to Bound by Fantasy, a channel about books and bookish things. Today I'm going to talk to you about my 2024 year in books. So last year I read 53 books. I am going to talk through and list probably most of the books that I read. I might kind of group some together because I read entire series. And then I read some self-development, personal development ones. Books that are biographies, so I might just sort of highlight the ones that really sort of stood out to me. Okay, so really enjoyed 2024. Was able to read some series that I haven't read in a while, and then also some new series, which was really fun. And then, like I said, I kind of like to sprinkle in some personal development books or biographies. I actually read a lot of biographies this year, which was really cool. So I'm going to kind of talk through from beginning of the year to end of the year, what I read and kind of highlight some books that really sort of stood out to me. So one of the first personal development books that I read was Mindset by Carol Dweck. I have used this in education before and used this idea, so I actually read the official book this year, which was really cool. And then The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. So that movie came out this year or end of last year. So I decided to read the book, and I did watch the movie first this time and then I read the book. I have found that kind of doing it in that order is just easier. When I read the book first, I usually am just always disappointed in the movie, so I like to do it the other way around. I did actually find it super interesting. So that book is about President Snow and how he became President Snow and his life before Hunger Games, essentially. Really enjoyed it, and actually after I read that, I decided to read the entire Hunger Games series again. So that was super fun. I haven't read that in years, so that was really exciting. The Hunger Games and Catching Fire I think still stood up just as much as they did before, but Mockingjay was just a huge letdown. I don't know, I feel like I didn't really like it the first time I read it either, and kind of same thing this time. So then Iron Flame came out last year, so I reread Fourth Wing and then I read Iron Flame. So I did do both of those. And then I also read a couple of classics this year. So I did Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, couple other personal development books kind of mixed in there. One was Effortless, which is Make It Easier to Do What Matters Most by Greg McKeown. And then I read a couple of the Harry Potter books. So I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and then Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I feel like this year was sort of an inspiration from movies. I kind of watched movies and then was inspired to read the books based on it. So I watched Ready Player One. I've seen it before, but then I kind of remembered that it was a book, so I decided to read Ready Player One and Ready Player Two, and actually really loved them. I totally would read them again, honestly. They were really great, and I ended up buying them after I read them, so they were really good. Those are by Ernest Cline. Also did Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and then I did the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. Those were amazing. So those books are sort of a spin-off series from the Caraval series. In that series, there's a character who is Jax, who is the Prince of Hearts, and this series is more based on him. When I read the Caraval series, I did really like him as a character and was very intrigued by him, so that was really fun to read a series not completely based on him, but primarily kind of based around his character. So highly recommend that series. It was amazing, and I really loved it. I think I would totally read that one again too. I also, again, I kind of read a couple of classics, and I love the movie Jaws, so again inspired from I guess this was my year of reading books based on movies. So I read Jaws by Peter Benchley, and honestly was massively disappointed. There was just some really, I don't know, disturbing things in that, not about the actual shark, but the people and the characters that were in it. Honestly, it was just sort of like raunchy and gross and didn't like it. I wanted like way more shark and like not so much of the aspect about the people. Something I liked about it was that like I got to kind of hear a little bit more perspective of like why they were so insistent on leaving the beaches open, because you learn more about like the town and how reliant they are on the business for the summer, and that like they can't survive without it. So that was interesting, but honestly, I would not read that book again. That was a book that I thought like, oh yeah, I'll wanna own it, read it, read it several times. I will never read that book again. I would not pick that one up again. Another kind of personal development book that I read was The Anxious Generation, which was like pretty big this year. That was by Jonathan Haidt. And honestly, I mean, I read a lot of personal development books. I felt like really let down by that book. I don't know. I was not impressed. There was a lot of other books that I've read that I liked those more. So I don't know that I understand the hype around that one as much, but I mean, if that's your thing, that's totally cool. That was one that stood out to me. Then I read The Wren in the Holly Library by K.A. Lind, and that one was amazing. That might be one of my favorite books that I read this year, maybe with the exception of like The Fourth Wing and like another series that I'll talk about in a minute here. But absolutely love The Wren in the Holly Library. When I first started reading it, it talks about like just monsters and there being monsters in this world, and I was like, okay, that seems very, I don't know, just the way they talked about it, just sort of corny. But I loved it. Like, it was just a completely different spin on things, and like, I can't wait for the next book to come out. I loved that one. Also, that book is just so pretty. Like, the painted edges on the side, the cover, and then when you take the dust cover off, the outside of it is painted like a library, which like I just absolutely love, especially because I love books so much, obviously. Again, had a couple other like sprinkled in there, like some personal development books. And then I started getting into biographies this year. My favorite that I read last year was The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. I liked Britney Spears growing up, I was a fan of her music and everything. And after the like Free Britney movement, that was a really interesting book to read. And it was amazing. Like, I really, really liked it. So that book, most of the like the biographies that I read this year, the autobiographies I read, they were read by the author. This is the only one I think that wasn't. She did a little like clip at the beginning of it, but I totally just understood why she didn't do it, why she didn't read it herself after that. So she talks about that in the clip. And so I liked that, because I was a little disappointed at first that like she didn't read it, and then after hearing the entire story, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It also just, in like the media, we see things like people's lives portrayed in a certain way, like her shaving her head or like hitting the like car with a umbrella and stuff, and she just like explained why those things happened, and it just made so much more sense. So I, those are things that were just iconic, right, in like media history. So I think that it just gave a lot more perspective into her life and into the Free Britney movement, and like why she wasn't free, and why she had the agreement with her dad and things like that. So I really, really enjoyed that one. Another one that I read this year was Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. That one was pretty good. It also was just more impactful because he did pass away. So reading it after that fact it was very impactful, and was very like sad to hear like what his struggle was, and that he kept trying to stop drinking and just couldn't. So hopefully maybe that book, and that's what he hopes, is that it will inspire others to be able to sort of rise above their challenges too. Then I started reading the ACOTAR series. So that is another series that just sort of stood out this year. I read almost all of the ones that are out. The only one I haven't read is A Court of Silver Flames, but the other ones I read all of them. We've done lots of coverage on those, so if you guys want to go check that out, feel free to do that. You can see those on the channel. We kind of do a deep dive into each of those books. I would recommend reading them before you do that, because we do talk through the books and kind of what in detail like happens throughout them and how we felt as we were reading them. But they were really, really good. I enjoyed those a lot this year. So that was the series that really stood out, and obviously we've talked about it a lot on this channel. Okay, and then I did a couple other like classics. There were like the Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle, which are just like short classics that were, you know, just kind of fun to read as little like in between books. I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss and Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Those were both pretty good books. And then I also read Frankenstein as well by Mary Shelley. So those were good. Then I decided I wanted to so I enjoyed rereading the Hunger Games series so much that I decided I wanted to reread the Divergent series. And I reread that entire series. So that one I also did some separate coverage on, so if you want to kind of dive into that, you can feel free. Kind of just overall impression was still absolutely love Divergent and Insurgent. Allegiant is a huge letdown. I feel like both the Hunger Games series and Divergent should have maybe just ended after their second books. But I still just really enjoyed them. They're, you know, I was like nostalgic for reading them this year and just really enjoyed them. I also watched the movies after the fact, so that one and that one I can do in either order because I've seen it before, obviously. So that was kind of fun. I also read another like kind of personal development one was Goblin Mode by Michaela Coyle, and that was just like a fun, silly little book that I just really enjoyed. It was just, you know, something kind of light and easy, kind of in between some other books. Then I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Lori Gilmore, and that one was really cool. So that's a newer series that came out, I believe, this year. And there's like a couple of those books, but it's essentially, and I'm actually like repping my Gilmore Girls Stars Hollow shirt today. I absolutely love Gilmore Girls, and those books kind of remind me of Gilmore Girls. So they sort of take place in this like small town, and you just get to see like the interaction of the characters and just kind of their everyday life, and like two of them falling in love, and it was just a cute, light book that I just really enjoyed. I do also have like the next two, the Cinnamon Bun Cafe, and there's a Christmas one and I forget what it's called, but I haven't read them yet, so I'm looking forward to reading those at some point too. I also read a couple other autobiographies, so Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar. So that is based on like 19 Kids and Counting, and Jill Duggar was like the oldest sister there. That was really interesting. I remember that being a show, but I never really watched it, so that was, I really enjoyed that book actually. It was super interesting. It just sort of came up as a recommendation, I'm sure because I was reading other autobiographies this year, and it was really, really interesting. That's also one that I would probably recommend. I really enjoyed that one. And then another autobiography I read was If You Would Have Told Me by John Stamos. I love Full House and, you know, really enjoy John Stamos. But honestly, that one was not as good. I wasn't a huge fan of that one. Some of the other ones, and maybe it's just because I read so many of them this year too, at that point I was maybe just kind of like, I don't know, had higher hopes because of some of the other ones. It was okay. It just wasn't super great, so it was all right. Then I read Assistant and Apprentice to the Villain, and those were both amazing. The second I finished Assistant to the Villain, I had to pick up Apprentice to the Villain. We have also done some coverage on Assistant to the Villain, so you're welcome to go and watch that video. But Kendall introduced me to that one. She also introduced me to ACOTAR this year, so I've read several recommendations by Kendall this year. I feel like I need to like pay her back and have her read some of my recommendations this year. But that was really fun. I love those books. They were also just like a nice kind of break in between reading the ACOTAR series, because that really just kind of rips your heart out a little bit. So That was fun to kind of do that little break. Then we started our annotation challenge. So I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone again, but I annotated it this time. And then, we started swapping the books each month and sort of changing those up. So I also read Fourth Wing again and annotated that one. So you can check out that. We also did some coverage on our annotation challenge as well. We actually just finished it, so I'm super excited. I should be getting my Harry Potter book back probably this week, so that'll be exciting. It was really fun to do that annotation challenge and write in each other's books and then sort of pass them along and see what each other said. So I just finished Iron Flame, and it was nice because I was the last person, so I got to see everyone else's comments before I put my comments in. So I'm really excited to see what everyone wrote in my Harry Potter book. That'll be really fun. I also read this year 4, which was a Divergent spin-off novel by Veronica Roth. So that one was from the perspective of 4 instead of from Tris. That one I really loved. I had never read that before, so I did read the whole Divergent series first, and then I read that one. And it was great because it kind of goes through the Divergent series, but something I loved was that it gave the background before 4 met Tris and why he joined the Dauntless group and how he felt about Tris and how much he liked her kind of early on. So that was really cool. And then again, I kind of read some other sort of personal development books, and one of the ones I sort of left off with was Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There by Lewis Carroll. So like I said, I had read Alice in Wonderland earlier in the year, and then I kind of finished that one toward the end of the year. So overall, 2024, I feel had a theme to it a little bit. So I read some autobiographies, I read some personal development books, read a couple of new things, but I feel got inspired by movies this year. So I sort of watched some movies and read the series based off of that. And I really I think just wanted to read some things that I've read before. I read several, I did a lot of rereading this year. And I love rereading. Some people don't like to read the same book again. They just kind of want to always be reading something new. But I really enjoyed doing that. Obviously I read a lot of new books this year too, but it was fun to kind of read some of my favorites and be able to dive back into those and see, hey, years later, do I still enjoy them the same as I did then? So that was super fun. So I would love to hear what you read this year. What were kind of some standouts and favorites that you have from 2024? Message in the comments. Let me know, what were some of the ones that stood out to you this year. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe, hit the bell, and join our community of fellow bookworms, because here at Bound by Fantasy, the adventure never ends. Thanks so much. See you next time.